Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we've got a very special guest with us this week, Spence Wilson Jr., who is the chairman and principal at Kemmons Wilson Companies. But here's a fun fact that we're certainly going to talk about today. Spence's grandfather started Holiday Inn. And so he's thought a lot about this, what it means to be the third generation of really an iconic American brand. And so he's going to share the W's and L's with us today a little bit. But Spence, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be with you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So Spence, we always start with kind of what it was like growing up. I mean, I give a little hint about your family, but that doesn't mean we know what it was like. Where were you growing up? Where were you in the kind of the lineup? Was faith a thing or not really? What was your exposure to the business? Just kind of paint a picture, if you will, of where you grew up and how that was.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the oldest of 14 Generation 3 members. And all of us, there was 5 Generation 2 members, 3 boys, 2 girls, the sons and daughters of my grandparents, Kemmons and Dorothy. And we all grew up in Memphis, surprisingly. So that really long-term had a big impact on the foundation that we still enjoy together today, even though several of us in our generation have moved on to different places in the country. But yeah, we grew up, pretty idyllic. I mean, I think our family got along very well, and I thought all families got along well. And over time, learned that wasn't always the case. And we just, we definitely a family of faith. So grew up in the Baptist church, now Methodist. So you Baptist folks don't hold that against me, but faith has been an important part in our life and journey, no doubt, and it continues to stay.
Didn't you tell me? You saw your cousins a lot, didn't you?
Yeah. So one of the real, I guess, secret sauce ingredients for us was, we give my grandmother Dorothy credit. She forced us to come eat dinner at her house every Sunday night. And I can tell you honestly, I really look forward to those moments. And I think all of my cousins did. And it really gave us a unique opportunity over a long period of time to develop very deep, meaningful relationships that, started with just roughhousing, playing football, riding go-karts around, crashing them, what have you. But we got through time, you got to really observe, one, how our aunts and uncles operated, how they treated one another, how they spoke with each other about business, about personal things, about political things, what have you. And then we all were able to develop those bonds as well. So and we've gone through a lot of work over the years with different psychologists and whatever. And most of them would say that our Generation 3 acts more like a Generation 2, which is part of the reason why I think we were able to make the transition to 3 back in 14, which I know we'll get into that later. But yeah.
I think that's really insightful to connect those dots. And I know, look, we were talking before we started recording, no family's perfect, no business is perfect, but there's something about that time together where you get to know each other. I've got 15 cousins and we were together. We didn't live in the same town, but we always got together every summer. So we kind of knew how to deal with each other. So I could see where if you had a family business later in life, when you're having to kind of negotiate that, tricky, the more maybe relational capital you have, hopefully it's a little bit easier. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, and so you're right. Nothing substitutes in-person, relationship building. So, I mean, you and I are enjoying this conversation with some of the new technology we've got at our hands these days, but there's still nothing that substitute. I think now, and I think you're probably seeing it too, we're starting to see even some of the younger generation starting to value the face-to-face. And so
You're right.
Good to see that kind of coming back which is the way we were, designed, divinely designed, was to be in relationship with one another. And so that was a huge help. What's interesting today is that the Generation 2 members and their spouses, so 10, all take an annual trip together. And then
Wow.
my Generation 3, 14 of us with our spouses, we also take an annual trip, believe it or not. And this year, somebody got the bright idea to go to Las Vegas for 3 nights. And so fortunately, we came back all alive and well. And
What could possibly go wrong?
no, exactly. And so that's, people say, well, what in the world do y'all do? I said, we act like kids again for a few
Right.
days. So,
Right.
but it's just the fact that we all love being with one another, spending time together, again, in business, outside of business, has been a real blessing.
Yeah, I think that is definitely, as you said, got to be part of the secret sauce. So take us through. Where are you with your siblings?
Yeah, so
Number.
I'm the oldest
Okay.
of the whole
Oh, the
14.
whole 14. That's right.
Yeah,
So of
all
course you're.
14. So
And
I'm
how
the
many
guinea
brothers
pig.
and sisters do you have?
I've got three other siblings, two
Okay.
sisters and a brother. My brother is actually the bookend on the young side of the
Okay.
14.
Okay. Wow, he's the youngest.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So where did you end up? Tell us about going off to college. What'd you study? Was it expected
Yeah,
you come into the business, or did you go do something else? How'd that all go down?
yeah. So you were one of the blessings, and we can dig in this later,
Yeah.
but was you were never expected to work for the business,
Yeah.
nor were you to expect to have a job waiting on you in the business. So it became somewhat of a self-selecting, kind of earned process, if you will. But I went to high school here, and then I went to University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and managed to squeak out an extra semester and watch Gene Stallings bring the national championship home in 1992 down
Nice.
from New Orleans. So that was my last official school function. And then when I got out of school, I worked at a commercial bank for a couple of years. And that was one of the things Dad and I had agreed to, that we would work outside of the company before you'd even be considered to come in. At the time, it was a 2-year minimum. And I'd say at the end of that 2 years, I, was, the banking industry and the way that company was set up, just wasn't a good fit for me. And I came back knocking on the door and just said, hey, and I did a lot of blue collar jobs in high school. So learned
Yeah.
the value of a dollar, which was, I think, still to this day, one of the key values for any person to learn. But I did, and so now it was kind of looking at and trying to learn more on what I call the white collar side of what we were doing. And so I spent about 6 months in orientation, looking at the various businesses and got really intrigued with, what turned to be a turnaround company. Spent about 5 years in it. It was a printing business, commercial printing. Unfortunately, we had to shut that business down. So kind of 5 years, for naught. But I also say, even though I did go get an MBA in '01 here in Memphis, I feel like I got my MBA in that business. 5 years manufacturing, real diverse mix of people and social economic, and then just a real difficult industry that was transforming as we got into it and started to really optimize the opportunity. The industry kind of went a different direction. We just had to throw in the towel. So a lot of good lessons learned there, and then spent time in another turnaround, and then decided to go. I say get the piece of paper, go get my MBA. Took about a year off and knocked that out at University of Memphis.
Were the turnarounds with your dad or without him?
No, 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 and they were without my grandfather too. I think
Okay.
they gave me some room to go. One was with a partner of my grandfather's, and the other one was a partner with one of my uncles.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that journey because, as we were talking before we started recording, nothing's up and to the right. And sometimes when I would imagine when you're part of a family with such a successful brand as Holiday Inn, maybe you think everything works. Oh,
Yep.
like
Yep.
we have the golden touch. Like, yeah, I mean, so to kind of get involved in some of those things, most businesses don't work,
Right.
actually,
Yes.
like by a long shot.
Right.
So, It certainly don't last as long as Holiday Inn has, but so I think maybe even was seeing those kind of turnarounds and how hard it can be, and some of them didn't work. Like I think, I mean, there's lessons in that alone.
Oh yeah, totally. And you really better appreciate your successes.
Exactly. How
Sometimes it's
unique it is.
Yeah, sometimes it's easy to take a success for granted. And
So true.
the failures really do help make the successes that much sweeter, but then also help you appreciate them that much more as well. And then, when you've got I mean, the good thing about failure is you learn all the things what not to try to repeat, and long term, obviously you get some gray hair with that, but hopefully that leads to some good wisdom over time. That's the idea.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So after the MBA, when do you kind of enter the family business?
Yeah, so I was technically in the business,
Okay.
starting in '95.
Okay.
I came back out of that after the MBA, kind of more behind the scenes, worked with one of our long-term colleagues here to try to establish a more what I call proactive private investment strategy, because we've been very reactive. We've been involved, my grandfather, in probably 400 different ventures and partnerships since
Wow.
1948. And so, but it was all very reactive. And so we tried to shift. So we drafted, our first private investment philosophy. And I spent a lot of time running around the country, knocking on doors, trying to tell our story. Spent a lot of time. We had made some private equity fund investments. So they were always a good candidate for me to learn and see how they were sourcing deals, diligencing deals. So we were able to apply a lot of their best practices to our own shop, if you will, and started to do that more kind of on our own over time. So even to this day, most of what we've done has been direct, call it proprietary direct investments we've done in operating businesses.
Maybe this is a good place to pause and have you
Yeah.
go back and tell the story. Man, I was
Yeah.
it of the history of the
Yeah.
family business and the origin. I was just wrapped by when
Yeah.
you told it to me the first time. So would you mind just sharing maybe
Yeah,
the first
sure. So the Holiday
of
Inn
the
story,
Yeah,
it's a great example of an idea born out of major frustration.
right.
And I think that's sometimes a common
Yes.
ingredient. You see a
Somebody
lot.
has a problem to solve, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this one was back in the summer of 1951. My grandfather decided, like most families, even today, to take your family up to see the nation's capital. Um, I'm not sure last night with the UFC would have been the right day to have visited, but in any event, 1951, so at the time he was an only child, and his mother, Doll, actually lived with he and my grandmother, and they had the 5 kids. So I call this, they took the National Lampoon's equivalent vacation up to DC that summer with all basically 8 packed in a car. And my grandfather went on to describe it as a absolutely miserable vacation. And he said that, in those days, you'd never agree to stay in a room until you physically inspected it. So you
Right.
can imagine they pull up to a motel. He leaves the car running. He gets out, goes to the innkeeper, goes and looks at the room. No, it doesn't work. Gets back in the car, kids kicking and screaming. You repeat this a few times, you can only imagine he's starting to boil. Well, then they finally get a room, and okay, this works. Kids, everybody get out. $6 a night is the charge. Well, the next morning they go to check out, and the innkeeper's like, "Wait a minute, you got 5 kids in there. Well, that's going to be $2 extra per child." So
Whoa.
$16 later. So he's already being a home builder prior to this journey.
Okay.
He always carried a lot of stuff in his coat pockets, but he does have a tape measure. And so he starts measuring up in his mind what would be the ideal room. He starts thinking about standards like, on this trip, and makes it home and basically tells my grandmother that he's going to build a chain of motels of hotels starting, in Memphis. And kids are going to stay free. We're going to have a swimming pool. We're going to have a restaurant, and those kind of amenities. And he said, I'm going to build the first one here in Memphis. And a year later, so we call him a man of action. And actually, there was a documentary we did a few years ago called Ready, Fire, Aim. If that wants to give anybody a, quick idea of how he operated. Well, that was a great example. He just didn't sit around. He got home, got to work, and built the first one right there in Memphis.
Man, and I just love it. I mean, I don't know why I didn't think of this the first time, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at when McDonald's started, but it's almost like a Ray Kroc kind of like, hey, we're gonna build this. I know it's maybe the McDonald brothers first, but that was so visionary to like, create something that we take for granted now, right? Yeah. Hotel brands with their setups and all that stuff, but he was really creating a market almost.
Well, I'll come back. Hold on to the Ray Kroc for a moment. So he builds the first one in Memphis, and he did do an autobiography back in the late '90s, and it's again tells you a lot about our philosophy today. It's called Half Luck, Half Brains. And what I call the first real half luck of the formula for him was his first partner in this business, a local home builder named Wallace Johnson. And Wallace Johnson, the half luck component was he was the former National Home Builder Association head or president. So he had a nation wide contact list of other home builders around the country. And so together, I think they built a few more. We had first 4 hotels were in Memphis, and they did a call out, and I think 70 home builders came to Memphis to hear the pitch on what some professors would say was the first true franchise model.
Yeah.
And so from there is when the brand started to take off, because these home builders came back to their respective cities and now had a commercial project to build. And then the other half luck component was Dwight D. Eisenhower, president at the time, mandates in 1955, I believe, the Federal Highway Act. And so you have this interstate infrastructure boom. So the combination of those things just allowed the idea to really flourish. And somewhere in there, Ray Kroc got really intrigued with the concept, this franchising concept.
Oh.
Apparently, from what I understand, he showed interest in building a hotel.
Sure.
And I think what happened was he got the plans, he got the formula, and didn't build. I think he got what he wanted to learn about the franchise, and then just went on and
because that's the thing most people don't understand about McDonald's. It was a real estate deal.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, man, what a story. And your grandfather came from kind of humble means, didn't he?
Yeah, so he was an only child born in Osceola, Arkansas. His dad died, what they believe, from Lou Gehrig's disease when he was 9 months old. And so his mother, Doll, they eventually moved to Memphis. He was not a good student. I think he had ADD, which me and several of my family have it also. So, but he was not a good student. Fortunately for him, the Depression hit. And the only reason I say that because he was able to drop out of high school to help Doll make ends meet. But they really were poor. Ate lima beans. We used to always ask, why aren't you going to eat your lima beans? Why do we have to eat them, but you don't? Because he said, that's all I ate for years, and I ain't ever eaten them again. But anyway, we had to eat them. But he really, so they came to Memphis, and he really started showing entrepreneurial, spirit, if you will, very young. He actually, he almost died. He got run over by a car in like when he was 12 years old, and was in a body cast for like a year. Wow. And so you talk about, and actually one of the most famous orthopedics, Campbell, I'm blanking on Campbell's name, but Campbell Clinic, was the guy that worked on him, because a lot of people said he wasn't going to walk again. He got him walking. And so I think that had a lot to do with forming his appreciation for each day and the opportunities that he had to pursue. And so he actually also sold concessions, which at the time wasn't popular or not really done, but he sold concessions at a movie theater and started making more money than the movie theater owner. This is around age 14. And the theater owner took his business away. He said, well, that's the last time I'm going to work for anybody. So then he went off and did a host of other things and landed on home building and even built his first home on the wrong lot and didn't quit home building, worked his way out of that mess and stayed with it. But that's kind of where he had his initial wealth. And then the war starts, and he had been a pilot, on the side. He learned to fly. Actually, would take people up on the river or around Memphis for money. That was one of his little odd professions. So, fly for dollars. And he did tell my grandmother he's got to go to the war because they can't win it without him. Give you a little bit about his spirit. And he did go there and flew the hump, surprisingly, over India, transport planes over the Himalayas. So just another real, probably some near-death experiences there. Came back alive, got back into home building, and then, goes right into the summer of 51, the Holiday Inn.
I mean,
idea.
That is, I know you're maybe working on a movie about this, and I can't wait to see it. I mean, that alone is a little vignette that I think Netflix would die to see. I'll tell you what, another thing I'm thinking of, I've had a little bit of relationship with some franchise model businesses, heck, in the last 10 years. And it's not an easy model today. Like 70, 80 years later, it's still fraught with difficulty sometimes, and to be the first one to do it, I can't imagine all the bumps along the way. Can you share any of that, from startup to kind of getting it to where they're like, okay, I think we got something. What was that path like?
Yeah, I think the first one, the first four were in Memphis, call it a couple of years, so 51 to 53 or so. And I think by 1961, maybe there was like 500.
Oh, wow.
Then by 72, there may have been 1,400. So it was pretty rapid growth. 65, he took a real gamble, personally guaranteed an $8 million loan, I believe, to create. I think they partnered with IBM on this, but they created the first reservation system, phone reservation system called Holodex.
Oh my gosh.
That was really key for that next level of growth from 65 to 72 and beyond, because that really differentiated their brand and allowed their franchisees to be differentiated, because people could just call the 1-800 number and literally be connected with the hotel on the trip, near where they're traveling. So
I'm literally getting flashbacks right now of traveling in the family
Rockster.
Truckster,
Yeah.
staying in all kind of Holiday Inns. We would drive from St. Louis to Pennsylvania, and that's what we stayed in the 70s. And that was the thing, man. Like that was that's where you win. It was the most reliable.
They had a great saying. It was one of their slogans years ago called "The best surprise is no surprise." I think that's really good. And one of the cool things back, in the early days, for sure. I'm not sure they do it today with all the stiff competition, but in the early days, if a customer came in, they said, "I'm sorry, we're completely booked," then the front desk was trained to literally not let you leave until they found a competitor hotel.
Oh my God.
With a vacancy to point you in that direction and send you off to. So you talk about really building some goodwill and brand loyalty. I mean, it was those kind of things that I think really helped set Holiday Inn apart.
What a cool little vignette. I love that little. That's a real customer service. Like, I mean, just so ahead of their time in all of these things. Like this is before the Ritz-Carlton came along with all of their principles about how to please people. But Man, it's just stunning. Okay, so man,
But
I
it was
mean,
real quick on Ritz-Carlton. I'm
yeah,
trying to remember. I'm
yeah, yeah,
blanking on the founder's name. My grandfather went to meet him in his office.
yeah.
And as you can imagine, Ritz, much like the hotel chain, the office is pretty opulent. And my grandfather goes, "Good Lord, you're going to go broke." And he said, "Well, Kimmons, we cater to the upper scale luxury." He goes, "Well, I focus on middle America because the good Lord made a lot more of them."
Exactly.
So that was kind of
So
interesting.
good, man. It's so good. Okay, so I know we could go forever on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's just such a great story, man. So take us through like how did your dad get involved and maybe his siblings, and then and I know that I mean again we know that like 90%
Yeah,
of businesses do not make it past the third generation, and so the
yeah,
fact that your generation's pretty darn healthy involved. So can you kind of take it through your dad's generation
yeah.
and then maybe kind of pick up where we left off?
Yeah, so the three boys, I call it, my dad, his two brothers, both came into the business late 60s, early 70s. And, I would say one of the, early challenges was the oil crisis. My grandfather
Oh, yeah, right.
being a big fan of utilizing debt, he pledged a lot of Holiday Inn stock
Oh,
as collateral. And so when Holiday Inn stock, went from $30 to $4 overnight in 74, you can imagine how many banks came, running. And so my dad really had to help, and my uncles, they really had to navigate, what was a near death business experience, a near
yeah.
death bankruptcy experience. So they got through all that, and I think that really shaped them in ways that my grandfather was shaped through the Depression, um, and so they kind of running along in the business. At some point, my grandfather passes ownership in the holding company. Again, the holding company started in '48. This is that side business that, for the most part, was a vertical integration play. It turned out during the '50s and '60s and some of the '70s for my grandfather, while the Holiday Inn chain was growing, he would often buy manufacturing companies, supply companies that would
Ah,
supply
okay.
that would provide services, goods and services for the growing hotel chain and franchise
Yep.
ease, but also other competitors, what have you. So at some point, he passes ownership down equally to the five siblings. And then we had bought some failed thrifts from the government in '88 during the savings and loan crisis, ran those, grew those through Arkansas, started into Tennessee, had a big realization in '98. Well, the three boys decided or made an offer to buy the two equal owner but non-active girls out of the business. So the
Okay.
girls, they decided to do that. So at that point, the holding company kind of set sail with three family branches and 9 of the 14 G3s. And then, we've still got a foundation that my grandparents started that has still got representation from all five family,
That's cool. Is
units.
that a uniting
Yeah, yeah. So that's connective
entity?
glue and tissue that still unites us, keeps us together. And then we've also got a timeshare resort, Holiday Inn Club Vacations, based in Orlando, and all 19 family members, if you count them up, the five G2s and 14 G3s are all part owners there. So we've still got connective glue there as well. So yeah, so you kind of fast forward to 2014, maybe a couple years before, we charted a transitional plan with 5 of the 9 who were active in the holding company where I sit and chair today. And then we enacted that transition of leadership and ownership in 2014. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, sorry, but it's
No, no, no. That's very helpful. And where do the hotels reside now, or the brand of
yeah.
Holiday?
So really, the brand. My grandfather stepped down in '79. There was a big decision that the board kind of went against his wishes, and
Because it was a
that's
public company, right? Like,
public company.
so
Yeah,
it's not like he could just give the private stock to the kid. I just want to make that
right,
clear. Like,
right, right. And they wanted. It was actually the company wanted to buy Perkins restaurants. And for anybody that's any of your listeners that are in the food and beverage industry or hotel industry like we are, food and beverage is really hard. And
It is
I
hard.
think he saw that as, non-core and, making life more difficult for the company if the company was to do that. So they didn't. And so he was pretty unemotional about it, stepped down
Wow.
and kind of walked away,
Yeah.
microphone drop moment for
So it
him.
was kind of really the other businesses, the
Yeah.
ancillary businesses that kind of the
Yeah.
family continues to run. And
Yeah.
of course, there's a lot of that institutional knowledge, and maybe that's a good full circle place to kind of pick up where you left off about the family office and now
Yeah.
trying to have your own thesis.
Yeah.
I know whenever you and I talk, there's definitely some hotel talk in there, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some service. It seems
Yeah.
like I don't know all the generation
Yeah.
you're involved in, but I can see it in you, the way you think about kind of real estate, hotel service. I can tell that's a big deal to you. So my guess is those things are in the soup.
Yeah.
But maybe if you don't want, whatever you're willing to share about kind of where those
Yeah.
parameters are for the kind of things you get involved in.
Yeah. So we are still heavily in hotels.
Yeah.
So my sibling and cousin partners, we decided in 2020 for the first time really in our company's history to create a fund, a hotel fund, where we would bring third-party capital come alongside the family capital. So we launched our first one in January of 2020, and then we all know what happened in March.
COVID. Yeah.
And hotels were not, the ideal company on the front line of that wave when it hit the country. But kind of muscled through that, learned a lot, built a team. Actually going to end up probably doing decently well on that. Not our original expectation, but we're going to hopefully return the capital plus a little more. And then we went on to raise our second fund in 23. Larger fund, and now we're in market raising our third fund. So, and we're somewhat, I would say very opportunistic and very agnostic about the brands. We still do have some Holiday Inn brands. We've also got some Hilton brands. So really more trying to find the right property and then fit the right brand with it in the right management company, obviously with it as well. So that's really one of our core areas of focus today. And then we also have a clean tech company called Peak Plus here in Memphis, and then Central Barbecue, what we think is some of Tennessee's greatest, Memphis is for sure, but greatest barbecue, and then Wiseacre Beer, based here in Memphis, but Tennessee's largest craft brewer. And we've got a position in Howler Brothers, men's outerwear, sportswear in Austin, Texas, Tacova Boots, which is also in Austin.
Yeah.
Laughlin Randall, which is a great women's shoe wear and accessory company up in New York. And then Billy Reed, which is a men and women's clothing designer company based in Florence, Alabama.
Love it. Still going strong, man. So, how many of your generation are now kind of still involved? It seems like everybody's still kind of involved in the foundation and the Holiday Inn Club business, but in the holding company, how many?
So there's 9 of us, and 5 of us are active owners, and 4 are equal but not active.
Got it.
And
then, Spence, we always try to kind of wrap up with a practical tip for somebody behind you on the journey. But because this is such a unique story of 3 generations going down, and you've navigated, how Grandpa exited, how the generation above you did that with their siblings and their generation, and you're having to do that. I mean, that to me, it's not that surprising that it doesn't happen well very often. And I'm not saying it's perfect for you, of course, and I'm sure you wouldn't say that, but I know you've thought a lot about this topic. So maybe instead of maybe one practical tip, are there a couple of key things that you would communicate to other people that are maybe a little behind you on this, thinking about this multi-generational, just whatever comes to mind?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just to kind of get into a little bit of some specifics, it's this simple actually.
Yes.
When back in 2012, there was a couple threshold questions we asked our G2, my dad and two uncles, and there was one threshold question that my counterparts in my generation asked. First question to G2, threshold question was, do you see this business lasting beyond your years on Earth? And they're like, yeah, we could see that. And then two, we said, do you think the business is better off with family members in various forms of leadership versus a non-family run business? And they said, no, we think the family dynamic is critical to our, has been critical to our, excuse me, critical to our success.
Yeah.
And we think that it's critical to the culture that we've built and tried to promote. And so, of course, being a G3, you're like, okay, that sounds good. Now, the three
Right.
at the time, five of us had to look at each other and say, hey, are we going to be stronger and more successful together under a common umbrella versus go kind of our separate ways? And so I say, kind of had all hands in the middle and said, no, we think we're going to be better together than apart.
Wow.
And so really with that really gave us all the confidence and conviction to then chart what took about 2 years, which I had no idea it'd take that long, and a lot of work to crystallize, the transitional path and kind of vision that we had to ultimately craft to get G2 to throw G3 the keys. And so there's a lot more in just that transition, and that's part of the story. But
I like these just the fact that they're questions
yeah,
and not commands.
yeah,
Because I think there's a tendency for maybe those earlier generations to just tell the next generation what to do.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I like that you frame these things as questions, and then, man, I just keep coming back to that. I'm so glad that you tell that story at the top about dinner with grandma,
Oh
with
yeah,
all the cousins.
yeah,
When you were saying, I'm literally like thinking about how you're going to answer that question. Are we stronger,
yeah,
together or separate?
yeah.
And I'm just, even though I've heard this story, I'm thinking, well, let's just do our own thing. I mean, like that would likely be a good outcome for a lot of people. So I just think it speaks a lot to I don't know how else you say it, family culture
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that you
listen, I
have,
mean,
that you want to, try to make it work.
right. So I'd be the first to say that, there's nothing better than working with your family, but there's probably nothing worse than working with your family if you don't
Right.
get along.
It's hard.
So I say, you've got to have a foundation of trust,
Yeah.
mutual respect, and love. I mean, frankly, and with those, you can go a long way, personally and professionally, and together as a family. I think the other key element, and I've seen this unfortunately, because a lot of these families in third generation, mine's the absolute worst about it, but there's an attitude. I mean, I always say when you wake up, and I'm looking maybe at my listeners who are third generation, that this is kind of a reminder. It's especially if you've been afforded something like we have that was created by our grandfather, passed along to aunts and uncles, and now passed along to us. The day that we wake up and think somehow we deserve all this, AKA entitlement,
Yeah.
that is the one thing that will ruin most families more than anything else under the sun. And that is something that we take very seriously and obviously try to model through actions other than word. It's one thing to go say, don't be entitled. It's another thing to not act entitled, to be humble, stay grounded, things like that. And so we've got great parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents that have modeled that behavior. Generation 3 tries to do that, continue to do that. And we just try to make sure that doesn't creep in, because that's really where things go awry. And fortunately, so far, knock on wood, we've not had that really come in. So we take the mission of stewarding this legacy that we've been afforded. Again, we had nothing to do with what was created and handed down, but we have now 100% responsibility of what happens next. And the last thing my generation wants to do is be the one that screwed it up. And so we're trying to really enhance what's been given to us. And hopefully we'll have some folks in the fourth that'll be able to kind of carry it then again forward. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I like that word stewardship,
Yeah.
I mean, because it implies a temporary control, I
Yeah.
think, not an ownership, but a stewardship. And I think, I know from a biblical perspective, right? That's how we think about everything God gives us, including whatever business related things inside a family or outside a family. And I think with that attitude of stewardship, right, it also sort of implies responsibility,
Yep.
not entitlement. It's a job, not a
Yep.
entitlement.
Yep.
Can you talk just how maybe your faith interacts with your thought about that? Are those kind of congruent?
Yeah, I mean, faith is definitely a big part of my family's life, my life. I say that, we operate predominantly, though, in a secular world. So it doesn't take long, probably, for someone to maybe pick up on faith with us, but we don't wear it on our sleeve only because we don't want to push people away.
Yeah.
I would say, and I mean, everybody's got their own style and method of how they go about it. So I think we try to, and me personally, I mean, I definitely, I think about, all the challenges we face daily, in business, outside of business. I couldn't imagine not having, someone to go to, in this case, God, for guidance, and to help sort through, help, give me wisdom, discernment, make the right decision, the right time, the right place with the right people. I mean, just, those are some of my continued daily prayers, because you just never know where you're going to be and what's going to happen. And invariably, what we do for a living can be difficult at times. And but I do think, when I think, with prayer, and I think with when you try to stay congruent with His will and open to, word and scripture, that, you do get some confirmation along the way, sometimes, through just gut feel, and sometimes more than that. Sometimes just, maybe on a piece of paper when you're reading the Bible, sometimes something will come up and confirm. But I do feel like the closer you are, the more confirmation you get of being on or off the right path. And so, I, try to make sure that, I'm doing those things that I'm supposed to be doing, not that I want to be doing. I do get to do some things I want to do, and we all do, but I try to make sure I'm spending, the time I need to be spending on things that I'm called to do, if you will.
And I think the acknowledgement that God's in charge and has the answers, and implies that by definition we don't have all the answers. So that sort of, I think, feeds that worldview of not being entitled, because God can take it away too. If He gives it, and He can take it away. So,
yeah, and I think God expects us to work too.
exactly.
I know
Tend the
some
garden.
people, I know some people, think, hey, I'm just waiting on God. I'm like, yeah, well, I am too, but I think He's waiting on us. We got to get to work, and so you definitely got to. He's looking at us to kind of to be His, hands and feet sometimes on the ground. So
He gave us the garden, but we got to
Yeah.
plant the seed and
Yeah.
work it. So, so I love these sort of, practical tips, questions to ask each generation.
Yeah.
As we part, that's plenty, but as we part, maybe person to person, if you're mentoring a younger person and they're just going to take one step in the right direction tomorrow, kind of to think of this sort of stewardship, maybe they're in a family business or something else. Well, what's something they can just think about and maybe take action?
There are a couple things. One, I think I'm a real believer that inside every individual, there's at least one God-given skill or talent that they have that they're actually better than average at, and they actually enjoy doing. So, if I was talking to a high schooler right now, or grade schooler, frankly, I would be like, get with your champions in life, whoever those are, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers, and figure out what that is. I think the sooner you can discover that, there could be a profession around that you could build. But at a minimum, that's where you probably have a chance to really bring value to others and to the world.
It's a simple idea, but a great point.
Well, it's just because, when you're doing something what you like and what you're kind of good at anyway, it doesn't feel too much like work.
Exactly.
So it's kind of easy to go do it a lot. And so that would be one. I'd also say, I call it be a net giver. So in every day. And so I look at life right now with me. Unfortunately, I'm at the age where I keep getting asked, when am I retiring? So I don't know if that's trying to get me to walk out the door or not, but if that's a, subliminal message. But I'd say today, I call it, I got 4 spheres in my life. I've got business, civic. I've actually been working a lot in what I call the city building of Memphis. I've spent a lot of time predominantly through our chamber, but real active in the community, trying to see Memphis reach its full potential. You've got the nonprofit sphere, and then you've got friends and family. And so I'm a big believer they all overlap, and they're all contracting and retracting, or whatever. What's the opposite? They're expanding. Yeah, they're expanding or retracting. And so in my mind, what I'm trying to do every day is take my skill sets, my network, my talent, my experiences, my resources, and how can I bring value to somebody else or something else in any and all of those, at least one, hopefully daily. And what I say is that when you become a net giver, again, you give unconditionally, not on condition, unconditionally. It's amazing that the joy you receive, there's only one void that can be filled with giving of yourself to somebody or something else. And when you see that person, you play a small part in seeing that person or place reach full potential. I mean, that's pretty special. And it's also pretty addictive. Like, I want to go do this again because I love this stuff. So you got that part. And then the really cool thing too, unexpectedly, you're a net receiver of a lot of great people and cool things that end up coming your way that you never even knew because of just the virtuous way that helping others and others helping others and the ripple effect. It just, things come back in multiples that you can ever imagine. So I would always think, don't wait till you retire. Don't wait till you make a certain amount of money. Like, everybody can give $1 to something tomorrow, and everybody can give a minute to something or somebody else other than themselves. I say start there, and God will tell you where you need to go.
I think such wise advice, because it's the operating system God gave us.
Yep.
He's a net giver to us, and the way we can thank him is to be a net giver to his people. And he's set it up for that virtuous cycle. I like the way you said that, for that virtuous cycle. That is, it doesn't mean monetarily necessarily. It can if he wants to, but it's the joy and relational peace and all of these kind of shalom, basically, that comes from it. So anyway, Spence, this has been so much fun. Thanks so much for sharing your story and being on the podcast today.
That's awesome, Jeff. It's been a pleasure, and definitely look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully on the golf course.
Exactly. We've got it on the schedule. Looking forward to it. And thanks, everybody, for joining us on this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.